Since the dawn of time, humanity has never been able to cease its struggles. And the main character is the strongest being, revered by the people as an emperor. To end the endless battles, a single ruler is needed. No matter how much blood must be spilled, he will do what he must, using his power to create a new world for humanity. No matter how skilled an opponent is, they all meet the same fate, death, when facing this man. Many consider the main character a devil for taking the lives of the innocent. But that doesn't matter, as long as it can bring an end to the wars across the land. A rain of bombs falls, accompanied by the piercing cries of the people. The history of the most powerful king is written. He has everything, but he is still a solitary figure, and as fate would have it, the emperor suddenly passes away. Thinking that everything was over, someone prayed for the main character to have a new life, illuminated by light. And so, when he opened his eyes, the lonely king was reborn as the child of a kind young couple. The boy was given a new name, Arthur. At first, he didn't understand what was happening, surrounded by unfamiliar things. The young boy wondered who these two people in front of him were. But then Arthur realized that he had died and was born to these parents. It's unbelievable that someone who had achieved countless glorious victories is now struggling in the body of an infant. His mother is Alice, and his father is Reynolds. Although this is their first time having a child, they take good care of Arthur. Everything is relatively stable, except for the fact that in this body, he has no control over himself. A subtle frustration constantly lingers with the young king. He occasionally poops his pants, but his mother happily changes his diapers. This makes Arthur feel like this body is a prison. The young boy often wishes he could wake up and see this as just a dream. Unfortunately, these strange occurrences don't end. However, there are a few things that intrigue the young king, watching his father use power that didn't exist in his previous life. In addition, his mother possesses extraordinary healing abilities. This world possesses a type of power he can't comprehend. His father's daily work is to go and eliminate monsters with his companions. To learn more about his surroundings, Arthur constantly tries to observe everyone. Knowledge is power, and this society allows each individual to own weapons. That alone speaks to the inherent danger. That's why the young boy wants to quickly gain power. These inconvenient days continue. His mother often sings her son to sleep, while he wants to explore even more. But the feeling of being loved and cared for isn't so bad either. Because in his previous life, he didn't even dare to hope for a peaceful sleep. Assassins were constantly coming to take his life. Time passed, and Arthur had begun to crawl. He enjoyed gazing at himself in the mirror, much to his parents' delight. They often called their son baby, which he found unacceptable. The dignity of an emperor remained within him, yet he was addressed in such a manner. Months had gone by, but Arthur couldn't get used to the name. Still, this was a minor issue compared to exploring the world outside. So, when his mother took him to bed, he slyly let Alice out of his sight and silently climbed down to the floor. After gaining control over his limbs, it was quite easy. Arthur tried to crawl as fast as he could so his mother wouldn't notice. Luckily, there was a library in the house filled with the information he needed. Knowledge is a weapon, and the young king finally obtained what he desired. The continent of Dicathan, where he was born, had 3 kingdoms. First, there were the dwarves living extensively underground. Next was the kingdom of the elves deep within the forest. And finally, there was Sapin, where his family resided. The human kingdom had the largest population. It was a monarchy, just like the country he ruled in his previous life. But here, there was a difference. The throne was inherited, not something to be seized. Compared to his previous life, this world could be said to be on the rise. Besides this basic information, Arthur also found a book about the power his parents used. One of the reasons why technology hadn't progressed was magic. Here, he realized that the power his parents used was made up of mana. The ability to control mana was largely due to inheritance from parents. And for every 100 people, one would be born with a special ability. There were 2 main ways to activate the power within the body: augmenting and conjuring. His father belonged to the type that used mana to enhance the body like a warrior. Augmenting granted immense strength and high defense to the user. Conjuring released mana outside the body and could control it at will. His mother had done it once, but she seemed more special than ordinary people. The core to controlling power was the mana core. Awakening as a mage usually happened from early adolescence to late teens. By gathering the potential mana fragments in the body to one point and creating a mana core, a person could become a mage. Arthur himself knew something similar in his previous life. But he called it Ki, the latent power within that helped the young king win every battle. And its core was the Ki center. He also wanted to try using his previous life's knowledge to turn it into a weapon for this life. While focusing on gathering mana fragments together, he was discovered by his mother. Just like that, baby Arthur was lifted up without being able to learn more. Alice sensed something from her son that made her worried, thinking that his training had been exposed. It turned out that Arthur had pooped his pants. At first, he thought he had controlled it, but when he touched underneath, he felt warmth. The young king couldn't believe that someone like him, because he was too focused, didn't realize he had shitted his pants. Once again, he saw this body as a prison because he couldn't do what he wanted. More time passed. Arthur was now 2 years old, and his mother always wrote down everything about her son's changes in her diary. For Alice, he was the most adorable child in the world, full of curiosity and especially well-behaved because he didn't cry. But what worried the couple was that they had never seen Arthur laugh or play. Outside at this moment, Reynolds was teaching the boy how to use a sword. Seeing him swing the stick like that, the father praised his son for having talent. It's just that the mother didn't like this. She asked her husband what he was doing to the most adorable Arthur in the world. The boy had just learned to walk, yet he was being trained like this. During this time, Arthur also realized how great his mother's power was. Reynolds never dared to talk back to his wife. Arthur wondered if this world might operate under a matriarchal system. Now that he was a bit older, Arthur was taken to the town to shop for things. Discovering new things, he kept exclaiming with joy. Understanding his intentions, his mother indulged him, taking her son everywhere. Based on the weapons, the young king could assess the country's level of development through technology. Additionally, there were many types of materials here that didn't exist in his previous life. The most special and attractive thing was definitely magic. Today was a bigger harvest than any information he had secretly researched before. After playing until the afternoon, he got sleepy. Arthur felt how much his parents loved him. While there were a few inconveniences, he ultimately had nothing to complain about. So this is what it feels like to have parents caring for you? Something Arthur had never experienced in his previous life. He had been abandoned at an orphanage just a few weeks after he was born. Growing up there with friends in similar circumstances, Arthur had always longed for a mother. And now he had fulfilled that wish. The warm feeling of being with her was truly pleasant. So Alice had realized that her son often sneaked out of bed to read books. And also when Arthur's eyes lit up when he saw new things at the market. It seemed Arthur had inherited the blood from Reynolds, since the father also loved adventure. And one day, when Arthur was older, his son could see countless new things in the world. Just like his father. The mother hoped that her son would choose a gentle and peaceful path. The next day, the little boy felt lucky to always have a living textbook by his side. Watching his father practice every day helped him realize many things. His father was a warrior, so he wasn't good at using magic. The mother also came to say that her husband was a bit weak in this area, but his physical strength was impeccable. Witnessing this scene, Arthur immediately wanted to try. However, it was almost nap time, so his mother wouldn't let him. Out of options, he had to use his special ability to persuade. That was to show off his cuteness, which bewitched Alice. She initially refused, but seeing him keep begging, she had to agree. The young king was also happy that he had won this time. Over the past 2 years, Arthur had learned countless knowledge and experiences, the greatest harvest being the formation of the mana core inside him. Countless potential fragments were gathering at one point, creating immense power. This required intense concentration. Thanks to retaining his memories from his previous life, his efforts were finally rewarded. After gathering the last fragment, his mana core was complete. But accompanying it was a big explosion that affected his parents outside. Despite being seriously injured in the back, Reynolds still tried to run in to see if his son was okay. But what caught the couple's eyes was that Arthur had awakened while still under 3 years old. Just as they were thinking this was a great step forward, the wooden planks fell down. Ignoring the danger, the mother rushed in to shield him. The father also reacted in time, blowing everything away. Escaping death by a hair's breadth, Arthur felt his parents worry for the first time. Involuntarily, he cried loudly and called out, "Mom!" Just like that, the whole family shed tears because their son was safe. Remembering a fragment of his past life, Gray had been assassinated by a messenger. The council immediately sentenced him to death, but on a suspended sentence basis, wanting this person to take his wife and children back to their homeland before being executed. The man also pleaded, because he had indeed opposed the emperor. However, his wife and children had done nothing wrong, so he hoped they would be spared. If he had to return home, the hardships would be even more frightening than death. It didn't matter what happened to him. But at least, please King Gray, spare his wife and children. The council didn't accept it, saying that the king is the light that guides us. How can we bother him with this trivial matter? The young man continued to beg for help. And as a result, his wife and children were immediately killed. The council didn't expect King Gray to personally take action like this, but still regarded it as true compassion, because death was the release from eternal suffering. The assassin was also shocked, but still had to kowtow and thank him. Back in the present, some time had passed since Arthur awakened. Reynolds had also ordered a pair of gloves for him to fight with, but it was rejected. Arthur thought that with this small body, engaging in close combat like that would surely get him killed before he could even approach the opponent. The two fathers and sons used wooden swords to spar. At first, they only fought normally. But after seeing Reynolds use his power, the little boy also followed suit. In just one hit, the stick in his father's hand was broken. Arthur laughed gleefully, asking if he was good. Also, because Arthur was too talented, it was suggested that he go to learn from a proper master. Alice objected because she didn't want to be separated from her son at all. Also, Reynolds had said that he would teach his son himself. Reynolds had initially intended to do so, but his son's talent was too outstanding, fearing that he couldn't teach him to unleash his full potential. It would be much better to have a proper master. Alice thought that she could also teach him about magic. However, she was scolded for having a special ability. Reynolds recounted that Arthur had just chopped through something enhanced with mana. It was no joke. Also, he was only 4 years old this year. Not an adult, this was also for Arthur's future, so Alice had to agree. However, she was still very sad, not wanting the most adorable Arthur in the world to have to go to a strange place to live. Reynolds agreed that his son was very adorable, but still had to try to persuade his wife. To resolve it peacefully, Arthur asked his parents why they didn't all go together. Hearing that, they suddenly thought it was the best way, so they agreed. They prepared the necessary things to move. A few days later, Reynolds' adventurer party came to pick them up. Arthur also stepped forward to introduce himself as Arthur, hoping to be helped. The last time, on the day he destroyed the house, these were the same people who came to repair it. They were members of a party called Twin Horns. Reynolds and Alice had also been in the team before they got married, so everyone was so close. They also introduced their names for Arthur to remember, including Adam, Angela, Helen, and Jasmine. They all cherished this sensible and talented little boy. Everyone started escorting the family to their new home to prepare for Arthur's studies. This was his first long-distance trip in this world. Although the mode of transportation wasn't the same as in his previous life, it brought a feeling of joy because his parents were by his side. At noon, everyone stopped to rest. According to what Arthur heard, the destination would be Xyrus City. He was quite looking forward to the new place, but there were also some problems to face. There were many wild beasts around here, and it wasn't safe at all. Fortunately, the skills of everyone in the team were excellent. Jasmine, Adam, and Helen were all augmenters like Reynolds. Angela and Durden were conjurers like Alice. This team had a high level of cohesion between the members, so the coordination was extremely smooth. Arthur thought that he also had to get stronger soon. In the evening, thanks to the wolves, the whole family had a delicious meal. Since this was in the middle of the journey, Arthur didn't dare to ask for much. At least the meat was very fresh because it was just hunted today. Alice couldn't eat much either, causing Arthur to worry. After seeing the wound on Reynolds' hand, Alice also intended to heal it. Knowing this, all the other members had to stand outside to watch for anyone following. Alice's skills were extremely special in this world. Sorcerers like his mother were said to be extremely rare. Therefore, people often concealed their abilities from others because they were easily targeted. Reynolds and Alice living in a remote place was also to conceal this ability. After recovering, Adam asked to relax his muscles before going to bed. He also wanted to check Arthur's abilities. He was a warrior who used a spear, so this match had too many disadvantages. From body to strength, because he was just a child, he had to find a way to approach. Seeing everyone quite excited, Arthur wondered if anyone remembered that he was a 4-year-old child. But the opponent didn't hold back at all, so the little boy had to fight with all his might. Arthur activated mana in his feet to increase his speed, shocking Adam. In a flash, he had slipped behind to slash, but was countered. Because his body was too small, the force blew him away. Fortunately, Angela used magic to cushion him, and the others scolded the guy for going too far. Adam thought Arthur was a monster, no joke. If he held back, he would be the one getting hit. Jasmine was extremely interested in the boy's movements. She asked how Arthur had been so fast just now, wanting to be taught by Arthur. Looking into this person's eyes, the young king knew this was someone who would never give up until they got what they wanted. Their journey went quite smoothly in the following days. Arthur was also taught many new things that weren't in books. In addition, the boy also taught Jasmine how to transfer mana into her feet to increase speed. However, this technique was not something that everyone could do. From that day on, Arthur was always being monitored by this older sister. The next day was Arthur's birthday, so that woman came to give him a gift. It was a knife, also to thank Arthur for teaching her how to speed up. His new weapon was quite specially designed, linked with a string, and could be used depending on the situation. People also rarely saw Jasmine being so close to someone. Alice thought it was because her son was too cute. As they were about to continue, Arthur suddenly noticed Alice showing strange signs. After a sudden movement, they were all attacked by a gang of robbers. Their numbers were very large, surrounding the entire area. The target was women and children, so Arthur thought to himself that it seemed these kinds of people existed in every world. The battle quickly broke out. The mother had to comfort Arthur, saying that she was here, so don't worry, everyone worked together to resist the gang of robbers. In terms of individual abilities, they were of course completely superior. Unfortunately, the other side had too many numbers, and everyone's strength was limited. Reynolds was quickly taken down, but still remained tough to reduce the worry for the mother and son. Also, if they knew about their special abilities, it would be even more dangerous. Reynolds asked his son to take his mother away first, and leave this place to everyone here. Initially, Arthur also wanted to fight because he had enough strength. But he was told that his mother had a baby in her belly. So Arthur had to listen. This was also to protect the baby in her belly. The older siblings stood out to clear the way for the mother and son to escape. Arthur thought to himself that someone who had stolen everything from him was now facing the possibility of being robbed. Perhaps this was the karma caused by his previous life. At this moment, a mage used magic to attack. Arthur sensed it and immediately pushed his mother away, while he himself fell into the abyss. At least he wanted to drag that guy with him, so he threw the knife. The two aunts and uncles hurriedly activated their magic to catch him, but it was too late. In this moment, Arthur began to understand what it felt like to lose loved ones. Along with that was the request of the person who had once tried to assassinate him. He didn't regret sacrificing his life to protect his family. The biggest regret was fearing that he wouldn't be able to see his parents again. In addition, he also wanted to take care of the unborn baby in his belly. In the evening, Arthur suddenly woke up and realized he wasn't dead. Right then, a giant creature appeared. More surprisingly, it knew Arthur's name and said good morning, scaring him. Faced with the enormous creature, Arthur wondered what it was and why he was here. While thinking about having to defeat the person in front of him, Arthur was lured in, but after rushing in, he was simply pushed back. The voice said that he was still very young and also claimed to be Arthur's ally. She then got up and went to pick some ripe fruit for the little one to eat. While Arthur was still scared and didn't know who this was. He wanted to get up and talk properly, but his body wouldn't allow it. Falling down here had almost shattered Arthur's body. Fortunately, he still kept his life, so he had to be grateful to the dark creature. She demanded that if he didn't eat properly, she wouldn't answer any questions. Hearing that, the little one took the golden ripe fruit and chewed voraciously. Arthur wanted to know how his father and mother were now. She had no information because she couldn't get out of here. However, she possessed the skill to see things far away, so she confirmed that the two people were not dead. Hearing that they were safe, Arthur was very happy. Arthur shed tears because at least he had helped his mother and the baby in her belly to be safe. He thanked the old woman in the monster's body, and was also told that her name was Sylvia. A memory fragment appeared about two women, but then disappeared immediately. And so a few more days passed. And Arthur still hadn't fully recovered. He wanted to go home as soon as possible, so he listened to Sylvia, eating, sleeping, and resting fully. The only problem was that he couldn't get his wish, because there were many monsters around this place. It was located on the edge of the Elshire Forest, the territory of wild beasts and outlaws. Fortunately, Sylvia had prepared a solution for Arthur, which was to train to become stronger, strong enough to resist danger alone. Also, it took a lot of energy to tear through space and escape from here. Arthur obeyed and began the training process. Considering that he was on his way to find a master to learn from, and was being trained like this, it was also good. What was difficult to understand was that the old woman didn't talk about her past, a strange monster that made him fearful countless times. There was a high probability that she had fought something powerful, so she had wounds on her body. In contrast to that figure was unexpected warmth, no different from a mother. While training his physical strength, Arthur also exuded an outstanding amount of mana, making Sylvia satisfied. She asked him if he could do this. Arthur was amazed when she used magic on her hand while concentrating mana, like flying while refueling. It was known that humans had prejudice about mana. They thought that they had to separate the two types when concentrating energy and using it. According to information from her, other creatures besides humans could do this. Especially a type of monster called Mana Beast. For them, using magic like this was like breathing. She asked Arthur if he wanted to achieve this power. Of course, the boy agreed. But he was challenged, asked what he wanted to do after achieving this power. In the young king's head, he recalled the scene of his parents being harmed by the robbers, extremely resentful, blurting out that he would give death to those who stole his good things. This was also his personality from his previous life. As a result, Sylvia slapped him to make him wiser. And also said that Arthur hadn't passed, so she wouldn't teach him, especially with a child showing a hateful face like that just now. He retorted, saying that there was nothing wrong with defeating enemies, he always did that in his previous life, which was why he could stand at the top. The old woman saw that he only ever thought about defeating others. She asked Arthur if he really felt happy. Sylvia thought that she must have hit him a little too hard just now. She said that this hand could easily tear him apart if it wanted to, but conversely, it could also touch him gently. she asked the little boy which he preferred. Arthur sweated profusely from fear, and had to say that he wanted her to be gentle. Rage and hatred easily erupted, and at the same time, generated unnecessary violence. He would definitely feel refreshed at that time. But afterwards, it would only increase hatred even more. She didn't want the life she had saved to become such a person. In that moment, Arthur suddenly felt that everything about him was understood by Sylvia in the palm of her hand. Returning to the question from earlier, what he would use his power for after achieving it. This time, beautiful memories of his parents and everyone appeared. The young king said that he wanted to protect his loved ones. Hearing that, Sylvia was very satisfied, gave him a perfect score, and started the training process. Changing scenes to another place, there was someone with a form similar to Sylvia trying to find the location of the two grandmothers and grandchildren. Arthur's memories of his previous life surfaced. At that time, even though he had power in his hands, King Grey was still controlled by the Supreme Council. He was only a king in name, and also a tool of war. The old man praised Grey's achievements to the heavens, saying that they had brought happiness to himself and the people of the country, asking if he had anything to do here. Grey said nothing, just quietly left, and also announced that he would abdicate. In the following period, Arthur had begun to master the technique of concentrating mana. According to his master, his magic potential would expand even more if he mastered this power. Even though he was in a hurry, he still reminded himself not to be hasty. He had to control mana at will. In his previous life, Grey wasn't blessed with many things, but because of his strong will to overcome everything, Grey became undefeated, along with the technique of using chi in his body. Up to this point in time, the young king had also learned the ability to customize mana magically. He was planning to run to celebrate with Sylvia, but he was blown away into a rock field. His body was also suppressed by his master's power. Sylvia demanded that he not speak. Looking through a narrow gap, he recognized that there was someone else with a body similar to his master right here. Sylvia praised this guy for being good, because he had found her location. It seemed that the smell of blood from the wounds on her body had led him here. This person demanded that the target follow, but there was no way it would be that easy. Hearing that, this person immediately attacked, to use violence to subdue Sylvia. She was able to block the destructive orb, but because the old wound hadn't healed, she was completely at a disadvantage. To reassure Arthur, Sylvia used telepathy to say that she was fine, so he shouldn't move. Because she wanted to fight to the death with her opponent, Sylvia pushed herself to the limit. Thanks to that, a new form was born. From a scary monster, she had become more beautiful than ever. The dragon's breath was very strong, but it didn't injure the other person. He warned that if she used this power too much, even she would be affected. Sylvia didn't care, saying that she had lived too happily, although she was a little regretful at this time because she hadn't taken care of Arthur. The guy became enraged and continued to unleash a bunch of orbs with world-destroying power. The white dragon also tried to evade, reducing the damage. However, that put Sylvia on the defensive. Sensing danger, she stopped time to send Arthur away first. He was called out and saw the true power inside his master in this form. The name Sylvia was extremely beautiful. Arthur asked if she was a dragon. Because there wasn't much time left, his master opened a portal, wanting the little one to escape from here. Although the portal connected to a place farther than expected, she believed Arthur would return on his own. Before leaving, she also asked again what he would use that power for. He didn't hesitate anymore and replied, "I want to protect the people I love. This will be my promise." In addition, there was one more thing Sylvia wanted Arthur to keep, telling him to wrap it with a feather and take care of it carefully. After handing over the power, strange marks began to appear on Arthur's body. Along with that was the sentence, "One day, you will understand." But now there wasn't much time left, the two sides would have to say goodbye. Although he was very reluctant, there was nothing else he could do. She said that the time together was very fun. Arthur also considered his master someone he needed to protect, but standing in front of that enemy, he couldn't possibly win. He also cried because of this, but was comforted that this was unavoidable. Arthur was surprised by the words he had said, thinking that it was because he was gradually changing, no longer carrying the thoughts of his previous life because Sylvia had brainwashed him. He said that she was his precious family. The master thought he already had a good mother, but was considered her grandson by the little one. This sentence surprised Sylvia and made her want to be called that in such a warm way one more time. Arthur happily called Grandma, along with tears of happiness from both of them. Sylvia said thank you, then pushed him away before it was too late. Stepping into the portal, he suddenly changed his mind, wanting to stay and help, but he was pulled into another dimension, unable to do anything. Time then reversed, and the white dragon took a direct hit and collapsed on the spot. Seeing this, the guy approached, thinking, can this be the end? And that was true. Sylvia tried to launch an extremely strong attack at close range so that the jade and stone would be destroyed together. And a huge explosion occurred. Along with that was a thank you from someone. Sylvia had completed her mission, so she handed everything over to the other person to continue helping her. Inside the portal, Arthur heard the voice of that grandmother. He felt very sad to have to leave, but this was inevitable. And this world was filled with such sadness. He hoped that Arthur could transform them into smiles. He thought that was impossible. Sylvia said, "It is true now, but in the future Arthur will be able to do that." This was Sylvia's wish, so he obeyed. In the final moment, the grandmother was sure he could do it, because he was the supreme king, but don't let his heart fall into rage and hatred like before. She prayed that the light would shine on his new life. Being called King Grey, Arthur began to realize everything. Just like that, Arthur woke up in a strange place, with tears rolling down his cheeks. Arthur had understood Sylvia's words, so from now on he would try to do everything to make this world beautiful. Suddenly, there was someone calling for help. Without a word, Arthur activated his power in his legs and jumped straight up to a tree for observation. He came across a scene where human traffickers were trying to capture a young elf girl. They believed she was very valuable and would fetch a good price if sold. Having completed their objective, they all chose to leave rather than linger any longer. This scene reminded Arthur of the time his parents were attacked, making him very angry. However, Sylvia's words helped him calm down, preventing negative emotions from taking over. As such, he followed the gang of thieves, hiding and waiting for an opportunity. They traveled until evening, when they stopped to rest. Arthur didn't know if following them would lead him back to the city, but most importantly, they seemed to have ulterior motives regarding the girl, so he wanted to act as soon as possible. The young man sat in meditation, waiting for nightfall, the time when the bad guys would be least vigilant. Looking at the three wolves, Arthur didn't understand why they obeyed so obediently, guessing it was due to magic. He took full advantage of this, hoping to mislead them. The men didn't notice at all and approached. In the next second, one of them was unexpectedly stabbed to death on the spot by Arthur, allowing him to acquire a knife to deal with the next one. Because his body was still a child's. Fighting made Arthur feel tired quickly. At this moment, another one discovered him. Arthur couldn't finish him off immediately, resulting in him alerting his comrades that there was a sorcerer here. Hearing that, the others were quite surprised because Arthur was still a child. The guy considered Arthur a rare find, wanting to capture him alive to sell. Seeing this man planning something, Arthur was quite cautious. As soon as the opponent charged, the young king dodged. However, when he counterattacked, it was ineffective because the opponent had some strength. He continued to launch a knife connected to a rope, but it was grabbed. Seizing the opportunity, the thug rushed in and kicked the boy away. He lifted Arthur up and advised him not to resist because it wouldn't work. Hearing that, Arthur activated fire magic, successfully escaping. The opponent was too pained and no longer wanted to spare Arthur's life. However, in the next second, he was finished off by him. The remaining man saw the scene and tried to beg. Unfortunately, they had probably committed many crimes and could not be forgiven. After dealing with all four kidnappers, Arthur approached the girl to save her. She was very scared, and when she saw a child around her age here, she was very surprised. Arthur was also surprised because this face reminded him of an acquaintance from his previous life. Outside, the elf girl saw the wound on Arthur's hand and showed concern. This was the first time Arthur had talked to someone his age, so he was a little shy. He had to cover all the corpses of the kidnappers so the girl wouldn't be afraid. Children shouldn't see that kind of thing. Then he was scolded because he himself was a child. When asked about those men, he pretended that they had met with an accident and didn't survive. After packing up, Arthur planned to leave the girl behind to find his way back, but she stopped him because who would do that? Actually, the elf girl was very scared and didn't want to be left alone, so she said, "I still have to go home, and the bad guys won't be able to chase us, so don't worry." She secretly thought that Arthur was planning to leave a cute girl like her alone in the dark forest, which was really reprehensible. Arthur thought that this forest was the home of the elf tribe, so what was there to be afraid of? But the girl claimed that her parents said if children go alone, they will be eaten by tree spirits. He asked which direction was the way home, and she pointed in the opposite direction. And as for how far it was, she had no idea because she accidentally got lost while playing this morning. Arthur felt that it was really unreasonable, but well, she was a girl, so he had to take her home. This would cause the young king to lose more time before he could return to reunite with his parents. Initially, Arthur planned to control the three wolves for faster travel, but he didn't know how. The girl insisted on quickly releasing them or they would die. Arthur feared being attacked, but unexpectedly, the girl knew better. These wolves are very gentle, they're just being used as tools by those bad people. Besides, she's a resident of the Green Forest, she can't just watch them die of hunger. After being released, the three wolves immediately turned around and left. Arthur was happy to see this and continued to lead the girl to find her way home. The next morning, they introduced themselves and he learned her name was Tesha. Since both were hungry, they took out the food from the four kidnappers and cooked a pot of soup. However, the taste wasn't very good as it was just boiled dried meat with salt. If there were some vegetables, it would be better. Arthur, remembering the days Sylvia took care of him, felt sad that he couldn't save her. The girl, though not used to eating this kind of food, tried her best to eat to regain her strength for walking. Arthur always thought that eating was just about absorbing nutrients. But a meal is also something that helps people connect. The girl said she wanted to eat something sweet. Definitely a child, but this point made Tesha even more adorable in Arthur's eyes. She asked why he came to the Elsai forest, and he explained that he had been separated from his family and was also lost. The girl was quite happy that they were in the same situation. The young king asked what life was like in the elf country. Tesha said that it was very fun in her place. However, her parents were usually busy with work, so she often had to play with her grandfather and the servants. On the way, they met some small, cute creatures. Every so often, Arthur would climb up a tree to observe. According to his estimations, their destination was still very far away. They continued walking while having no clues about Elena. Seeing some bugs flying around the girl, he asked about them. Tesha said there were many interesting creatures in this place. People often use fireflies as signals, and they can also be played with. The young king thought that this was how children played. Continuing to move, Tesha said that after awakening Mana, she would go with her master to study. Hearing this, he was a little envious because he also wanted to ask if there was a school system here, but the girl didn't know anything about it. Perhaps this world hadn't yet developed to the point where there were schools for students. Arthur suddenly spotted a wolf following them and was a little worried. In the evening, hearing the howl, he thought that he should have killed them to avoid danger. He told the girl to go inside to sleep, but she refused, saying he needed to be out here guarding. He wondered what kind of thing the egg Sylvia gave him was. Later, Tesha called him inside and also told him that her grandfather told her not to sleep with boys, but because Arthur had saved her, she would let him lie next to her. He initially refused, saying, "I'm not sleepy." Hearing that, she continued to make excuses, saying that if he stayed outside, bad people would find them. Arthur realized that the girl was afraid of ghosts, so he had to go inside. Tesha made an excuse that it was for the safety of both of them, not because she was afraid of ghosts, and even demanded that he stay inside. If he needed to go to the bathroom, he would have to wake her up to go with him. The two continued to talk about Arthur coming from the kingdom of humans. Tesha, hearing that men in his place are all perverts and have many wives, was shocked and asked how he knew that. She said her grandfather told her, but he thought that the elf tribe probably had perverts as well. More importantly, he wasn't sure if Tesha understood what pervert meant. Not all humans have many wives, only the wealthy and nobles are like that. After saying that, the girl fell asleep. Arthur thought if he had a younger sister, she would probably be like this. The next day, the two continued to overcome new challenges. Fortunately, Tesha had completely forgotten about the kidnapping. Climbing mountains and wading through streams were difficult for her. And each time, Arthur had to carry her across. Then, an unfortunate event occurred that caused him pain. For some reason, the mana core inside him suddenly experienced severe pain that was unbearable. Seeing this, Tesha was very worried and went to find herbs to make medicine, resting against a tree trunk. However, the pain didn't subside. He didn't want to let her know to avoid making her worry more. Just then, the wolf that had been following them yesterday approached, and they expected to be attacked, but unexpectedly, it returned the favor with a pig that it had just hunted. The girl said they were very smart, so this was understandable. In the evening, because they had meat to eat, the two were in a good mood. At their age, they needed to eat meat. Earlier, Tesha couldn't find any herbs, but instead found a very nutritious type of mushroom that her tribesmen often ate. Hearing that, he trusted and ate it, and as a result, he kept farting non-stop. The girl had to apologize because she thought this was too strong for him. After finishing up, the two sat in the tent and confided in each other. The girl recounted that she was often read stories before going to sleep. The stories about the human kingdom fascinated her, and she wanted to visit there someday. But she also heard that everyone in the human kingdom did bad things. Therefore, the residents of Elenoa didn't trust other races. Because he was too tired that day, Arthur fell asleep first. Tesha thought she was acting like an older sister taking care of her younger brother. The next day, the pain inside continued. Fortunately, they were almost home. Over the past few days, the two had become very close, so she wanted to call Arthur Art. He had nothing to object to because she was his first friend. Moreover, someone from a poor rural area like me is happy to have someone to play with. He teasingly called her the little lady who's afraid of ghosts and doesn't dare to go to the bathroom alone. She angrily stormed off because she thought they were friends, but he said that. Continuing to move, they finally discovered the entrance located in a tree trunk. Arthur was a little worried, so Tesha stepped forward to guide him, wanting to take her friend inside for a visit. Passing through the portal, a group of people suddenly appeared, saying that thanks to her, they were able to rush here immediately. In the next second, Arthur was restrained, leaving him confused. Calming down, Arthur realized this might be the kingdom of the elf race. Because Tesha was too naive, he himself had been careless. He tried to call her name to do something, but she remained silent. Arthur was frustrated because he had been deceived by her previous words, and he shouldn't have made the same mistake again, especially after experiencing it in his past life. Just as the soldiers were about to kill him, she stepped forward to stop them. They defaulted humans as vile beings. Tesha insisted that Arthur be released because Arthur saved me. Just when it seemed settled, the others thought Arthur had brainwashed the princess. At that moment, a voice rang out, stopping everyone and ordering the boy's release. He understood why they were cautious, as a human had appeared with their missing princess, so vigilance was natural. He introduced himself as Virion, the former king of the Elenoa kingdom. Knowing Tesha held a noble status, Arthur inquired. She feigned innocence, saying, "I thought I told you already." Just then, her parents arrived, and she cried, missing them dearly. The current king, seeing the human, ordered the soldiers to act. The father intervened, saying that regardless of race, this person had saved his granddaughter and brought her back, and they couldn't just kill him without knowing what happened. Tesha echoed this, saying Arthur saved her and everyone shouldn't be rash, even demanding her father invite Arthur to the palace for a grand reception. Before he could agree, she ran and pulled her friend away, disregarding everything else. Virion also reminded the boy to tell everything later. Suddenly, Arthur sensed an obscure power from this character, and vice versa. The two children then nonchalantly walked through the town, attracting attention from everyone. Everyone questioned why a human was in the elf kingdom. Life was exceptionally peaceful and simple. According to information gathered from previous books, humans and elves had clashed, and even now, tensions ran high. He never imagined he would witness the scene firsthand, along with the unique architecture of the elf race. Tesha remained affable, but her gaze was incomprehensible. Besides, the pain was tormenting him every moment, reminding him not to lower his guard again. Stepping into the palace, countless maids greeted the princess's return. She also asked everyone to take good care of the benefactor who saved her life, asserting that Arthur wasn't a bad person. Arthur thought she was too optimistic, as it only made things more awkward. She asked if he liked eating, drinking, or playing, but Arthur wanted to recount the incident with the kidnappers first. He wanted to resolve it quickly to return to his family. The girl's father agreed to go to a room. Arthur didn't speak because the princess was present, fearing it would create bad memories. Tesha had always been spoiled, so her parents couldn't refuse her wishes, even asking him to sit down, eat cake. Arthur was stunned, wondering if this was okay. Her mother and grandfather weren't as stiff as her father and simply smiled. The king then introduced himself as Anduin, Tesha's father, and the queen as Muriel, along with the former king. Upon hearing this, he bowed and introduced himself, born in a small town in the kingdom of Sapin. "I don't deserve to stand before a king, so I'm honored to speak like this." Seeing that he was born in the countryside but knew manners, the girl's father praised him. "Of course, because in my past life, others always paid their respects to me. Showing understanding is to prevent them from seeing me as a child, making explanations easier." He recounted roughly how he got separated from his family due to a robber attack. Although he didn't lie, it wasn't the complete truth. Then, he jumped to the part where he heard Tesha's cry for help, learning his daughter had been kidnapped by slave traders, and the atmosphere changed. The girl's father thought it was indeed the work of barbaric humans. Hearing this, Arthur spoke. "Slave trading is a profession, not a race." The former king wanted to know how Arthur could rescue his granddaughter. Did he exchange or plead for his life? He directly said he had dispatched them all. Even though he was just a child, he was a mage. Knowing Arthur had defeated all the evildoers, Tesha looked happy, while the two soldiers became more cautious, claiming a child like him couldn't do anything and had deceived the princess to infiltrate. Hearing this, Arthur remained silent, letting the hosts resolve it. Former King Varian also stopped the soldiers, warning, "I won't say a third time." Tesha also confirmed that her friend wasn't lying because she heard the kidnappers planning to sell her. Hearing this, the queen embraced the little princess. "Thank goodness my daughter returned safely." The king thus believed his words. Arthur continued about being attacked by robbers and getting lost, currently only wanting to reunite with his family. Hearing this, the girl's father thought he was asking to be sent back as a reward for saving Tesha. It was difficult to understand how Arthur dared to make such a proposal knowing the animosity between the two races. But Arthur thought that precisely because of the animosity, he couldn't imagine the elves despising humans as barbarians, fearing he would be treated similarly to actual barbarians. Hearing himself called a barbarian, Anduin couldn't retort, making the father laugh. However, the animosity between the two races couldn't be easily erased. Tesha then glared at her father, forcing him to agree to Arthur's request. However, the transfer gate connected to the Sapin kingdom could only be used once every 7 years during important meetings. The next time to open the gate would be next year. This was too long, making Arthur sad. Fortunately, the king agreed to have someone escort him back because he couldn't stay here forever. Hearing this, Arthur bowed and thanked him. They allowed the boy to relax for now, but the pain was acting up. How could he relax? Later, Arthur was allowed to return to his room for a bath and rest. The pain was getting worse, so he was wondering what was wrong with him, wishing Sylvia would guide him. At night, he went out to get some air, feeling better. The pain had subsided slightly. So Arthur wanted to find the cause and not let it continue like this. Up above, the girl's parents were still playing happily. This scene reminded him of Reynolds and Alice, wondering if his parents were okay. He thought that if it were them, they would survive because they both possessed strength. Arthur wondered if his parents would greet him with a smile if he returned, because he had hurt so many people in his past life, he dared not ask for forgiveness in this life. The girl saw Arthur and hurried over. Seeing this, he asked, "Am I interrupting your time with your parents?" Tesha got angry at being called a child. "I'm clearly taller than Arthur." She came to apologize to Arthur because her father and everyone else was so rude. He didn't blame them because it was a grudge from the previous generation. Knowing her parents were worried, he advised the girl to spend time with them. Tesha thought that if he reunited with his family, it would be the same as her. Arthur wasn't sure of this because the entire party had been attacked by robbers because of him. He wondered if his parents were sad that he was gone. As he was thinking about how he couldn't protect his family, the girl comforted him, saying, of course his parents will be sad without their son. Then she thought about how she would be sad when she had to say goodbye to Arthur. Fireflies then shone everywhere, and the scene delighted the two children. Thanks to this, Arthur saw the image of his parents waving. Now he realized that he had been swallowed by the darkness of his past life. Fighting the past had caused him to lose faith in his current life. So, he had to apologize to Tesha for previously suspecting her of deceiving him. While enjoying the fireflies, someone suddenly attacked the girl. Reflexively, Arthur blocked and kicked him in the face, revealing it was her grandfather. He was confused as to why he was trying to kill his granddaughter. The old man smiled and said, "Look at what you're holding, it's just a firefly, not a weapon." He had been tricked to test his true abilities. Based on his reaction, he now believed Arthur could kill the kidnappers. Tesha also asked her grandfather not to bully Arthur, saying, "He's not like the people you hate." The old man understood, saying he came for something else. "It's been a long time since I met an interesting person like you, so I wanted to test your skills." He created a wooden sword and used magic to take his granddaughter elsewhere so they could fight. Arthur also needed an opponent to test his abilities. The battle began with him taking the initiative, but all his attacks were dodged by the former king. Knowing the old man was strong, he had to increase his mana. However, he was still much faster. Seizing the opportunity, the young king wanted to overcome himself to attack faster and faster. During the fight, he began to lose his composure, but he was still strong enough to protect Tesha. He also remembered the eyes of countless beasts he had fought in his past life. The fangs and claws were swung instinctively. If he didn't, he would be killed. And Arthur was now in the same situation as an animal, so he tried his best to fight. Thanks to this, he scored a point against the former king, surprising him slightly. Just as he was about to start the second round, the granddaughter came and pinched his butt, saying it was enough. She asked him to go easy and knew that if he didn't, he would be the one being bullied. Appreciated, Arthur felt honored, but ended up being forced to become the old man's disciple. In terms of qualities, a kid like Arthur far exceeded normal talent. He said he still needed to tell his parents. He said he had a way to tell them that Arthur was still alive. Before he could agree, the reverse anger appeared. Seeing this, the former king knew that he had inherited the will of the beast, so he wanted to take Arthur as a disciple, otherwise he would die. Arthur's heart was pounding, feeling like something was tearing his chest apart. He even saw a beast inside his own body, wondering if it was the manifestation of his own fear. As he writhed, Tesha suddenly woke him up. Arthur startled awake, finding his friend sitting on him, resigned. So it turned out his sleep paralysis was caused by her, and he jokingly called the princess a monster. Tesha, annoyed, told him to get up and change because her grandfather was waiting outside. She also asked if he was really going to stay here and play with her. Arthur wasn't sure yet. He needed to contact his parents first to see if they were okay. He teased her by addressing her formally as princess, which irritated her. She insisted he call her Tess for short, like she called him Art. Outside, the king was asking his father to reconsider taking Art as a disciple, and even letting him live there. Virion said he hadn't even been told about this, and that it might cause others to gossip or go against the traditions of the elf race. The old man simply stated that he liked the boy. Tesha ran up, calling Art the benefactor of their family, but was scolded for acting like a naive child. Virion didn't want to say anymore, and told the two children to get in the carriage to meet a friend. Young king called his master old man, which amused the elder. Then he asked the boy if he was letting his guard down. Art felt it was normal, and that his attitude might change depending on what happened. The princess promptly fell asleep, and used to waking up so early. Tesha also wanted to know what Art would become from now on. As the sole heir to the kingdom, she had been raised in a very lonely environment. From adults to children, her granddaughter had been hurt countless times, and as a result, Tesha always created a wall to keep her distance from others. But when she was with Arthur, she always smiled. This made her grandfather overjoyed, feeling like it had been so long since he'd seen her smile like that, and he thanked Art. Arthur was surprised because the old man gave him a sense of trustworthiness. Later they arrived at their destination, important enough that the former king had to come to the house himself, showing the person inside was no ordinary individual. Wondering who it was, Elder Varian walked up and kicked the door open, yelling for the person inside to come out. The two grandchildren were shocked by this, but there was still no movement. When he leaned closer to listen, an old woman pushed open the door and slammed it into his face as punishment for shouting when visiting. She introduced herself as Rinia, an old friend and a special type of mage. Art guessed she could use magic similar to his mother, or something even more special. Arthur bowed, thanking her for the welcome and listening to his request. Seeing how polite he was, Rinia invited him inside without discriminating like other elves. Inside, there were countless books, proving the old woman possessed more profound knowledge than anyone else. What Art was most curious about was how she could help him contact his parents. After hearing how Arthur addressed the old man, the old woman chuckled, guessing he must cherish the boy. Rinia said she was a seer and had immediately recognized Art was special. There were things even he couldn't see, but Rinia could still see a fragmented past and future. He wasn't just there to contact his parents, but also to find out how they were doing. As a first step, Arthur was told to look closely at a basin of water, and focus his mind on imagining his parents. She received the memories from Art with one hand, and used the other to help display the images on the surface of the water. He was able to talk to his parents. To him, his mother always radiated warmth and furrowed her brow when worried about him, while his father had soulful eyes, a relaxed and friendly personality, and was a charismatic leader. Currently, they had moved to a new house and were trying to forget the sadness of losing him. Today also happened to be Arthur's birthday. Thinking of that made their faces visibly sad. Before, when they learned he had fallen into the ravine. The couple had fallen into despair, but luckily they had good comrades who encouraged and comforted them, and because they were expecting another child, they managed to overcome it. They were blaming themselves when suddenly they heard their son's voice. He told them he was safe and in Elenoa, the kingdom of the elf race. He was contacting them through special magic, and wanted to return to them, but couldn't, saying his body wasn't healthy and needed treatment. However, his parents shouldn't worry too much, as it wasn't too serious. After he recovered, he would return soon, so they shouldn't blame themselves for what happened. Hearing these words, his mother teared up because she didn't know when she would be able to contact him again. He told them to take care of themselves, said he loved them, and shed tears. It was a relief to know they were safe after that incident. With his wish fulfilled, Arthur then called Elder Varian Master. A few days later, during a conversation, Tesha scolded her parents for not wanting Art to stay here. Her grandfather supported his granddaughter, so the couple agreed to let the two children live together. If they were afraid of what the people would say, they would announce to the whole country that Arthur was a disciple that he was personally teaching, and that he would take responsibility if anything happened. The king then apologized to Art and welcomed him as part of the family. Suddenly seeing the change in attitude, Art understood what had happened and looked towards the two grandfather and granddaughter. He guessed that this king was very weak in front of his father and daughter and that they had made peace. Tesha wanted to take her friend out to play and was given permission. The two children went out to stroll the streets, as staying inside all the time wasn't good. Because there had been an announcement from the palace, no one bothered Art. He enjoyed this feeling of going out for the first time, and his friend even invited him to buy candy. But there were still bad elements who came to cause trouble. A boy his age frequently teased Tesha, leaving Art speechless. The princess was also advised not to interact with Art too much, as it would hurt her. The young man tried to provoke Art, pretending to be surprised by the blonde's name, even thinking it was the name of an animal. Hearing this, the boy angrily said Art was ignorant and uninformed. Seeing him teasing the little ones, Tesha couldn't help but laugh. Although she didn't understand how Arthur was playing with words, Ferrith knew he was mocking him and challenged him to a duel. The princess intended to dissuade him, saying even if he was a nobleman, he shouldn't be so arrogant. Feeling his honor trampled on, he refused, and wanted to fight Art. Everyone around them was interested, as a duel was an honorable battle. And so Tesha stood in as referee. As soon as the fight began, predictably, Ferrith was punched in the mouth and lay still. Art acted surprised, saying the fight was over so quickly, and he had thought his opponent would be stronger. His friend happily dragged him away, making him increasingly attracted to her. He also tried to enjoy himself before beginning his training. Elder Varian told Art beforehand that the training process was very arduous, and that he would learn to tame the beast inside him, which could be compared to being immersed in boiling liquid. In short, the future would be very difficult, but if he had enough perseverance and effort, he was sure he would overcome it and reap great rewards. The first lesson was to not care about the pain from his manicure. Arthur eagerly told his friend that before coming here, he had always trained with his family, and also had a grandmother. The two children encouraged each other to grow together. And so time passed, and Art always tried his best. Thank you for watching my video. Don't forget to click the subscribe button and the notification bell to stay updated when the channel releases a new video. Thank you.